so smart everything. So I've been hearing about smart cities for at least 20 years. I know there's been activities, I don't know, some people say Amsterdam is a smart city, some people don't know what's smart about Amsterdam at all. I know some smart shops. So the question really is, what do we mean with smart everything, right? But it seems to be clear that in this age of social distancing, we need more support. We need something to happen in our surroundings. There's stuff happening with voice assistants and Alexa and all these things. So there's stuff happening. Again, the same question, certainly for cities. Do we leave that to the market players? Do we need governments or work together? And we also have a little poll here. While we talk, you can give us your opinion when you're watching this, whether in the post-corona age, smart homes, smart offices, smart cities will be more important than our privacy.
And you can say yes or no. You cannot say I have no opinion. Right?
No.
Is that right?
Just yes or no.
Okay.
Everybody needs to have an opinion today.
Okay.
It's
And
smart.
I have a new guest, Sebastian Hoogstad. You work for Poly. What's Poly doing?
Thank you. So Poly is a manufacturer of hardware.
Okay.
We manufacture UC endpoints for communication, and that allows seamless and easy communication.
This question about the role of government. How do you look at the role of government, Sebastian?
I think it's facilitating. So
Okay.
I think they should facilitate a path the way, but it's not their role to determine where the market is going.
Okay. It's not a public utility.
Correct.
Okay. And one more, a new guest, Jan Horig, Comscope. What does Comscope do?
Comscope is producing the equipment that creates the infrastructure for telecom and IT, very often used for smart homes as an enabler, smart buildings, smart society.
And you're zooming about booming?
Yeah, well, you see some parts of the market less growth, but certainly on the home side, it's booming. Yes,
What are you talking about? The webcam stuff?
Yeah, but the infrastructure, we have a challenge in making the infrastructure important, critical. And, there's a Dutch soccer player, Johan Cruyff, who said every disadvantage has its advantage. Well, this is certainly so for the infrastructure. It's of critical importance, very much so in the home.
Yeah. And what about a little more long term? I mean, you have a positive outlook on the next 5 years or so?
Yeah, definitely. I think this situation now proves that communication is critical to all of us, wherever you are, wherever you live, wherever you work, wherever you see in venues, soccer games or whatever. The infrastructure needs to be of the highest quality, and that will continue to grow.
Yeah. Susie, where do you look at, when it comes to the role of government or private enterprise or a combination of both? And the difference of opinion, of course. I mean, here in Europe, we may think different about it than, you guys in the US.
Yeah. So we focus mostly on Latin America, outside of Latin America, and absolutely I would agree it's a regulatory, but absolutely not a utility. I think that has a lot to do with the integrity of the leadership of the country. So as you look at the European countries, you don't think diabolically, but communications is so important as a national platform that under the wrong hands, it could quickly go.
Well, you have some issues there. I'm sorry.
You know what I'm talking about. It could go the wrong way.
Yeah, don't go there. Yeah. But, I mean, are you optimistic about, the question whether these regimes, these governments, these political leaders in Latin America particularly, I mean, taking up the challenge and do what they have to do?
I mean, I think during COVID, there has been some pressure, right, on actually saying people don't have to pay, and so it's a huge pressure on the business around it, and there's a huge investment going in. But so far, so good, right? So far, so good.
Yeah. And Patrick, where do you see the opportunities when it comes to smart everything?
Mark.
I'm sorry, yeah, Mark.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I mixed it up.
Sure. Yeah, well, connected everything, we call it IoT, Internet of Things. I mean, there's just many use cases. IDC counts over 100 use cases. You mentioned smart home there, telemedicine, connected cars, fleet management, food traceability, on and on. We have seen, clearly the pandemic has forced a pause in IoT deployments as companies think about their cost basis and what is going to have the immediate return as they need to optimize their business for this environment. So we see uneven developments by industries. Traditionally, it's been manufacturing, transportation, utilities that have been early adopters, but clearly transportation has slowed way down with the pandemic. Manufacturing also has slowed down as the factories have shuttered. On the other hand, we've seen an uplift in government, public sector, healthcare, retail as well, where you think about curbside pickup, delivery, contactless purchasing, etc. So the use of connected devices and IoT has become pretty interesting there. And then finally, one of the newer developments we're seeing, and I think this is going to pull the whole space forward, is the augmentation of connected devices with AI, adding intelligence into the edge where those AI connected devices are, right? It's a distributed network. They're all around the edges. Putting AI there, closer to that edge, to empower automated decision-making in real time to decide how to treat different pieces of data. I think everybody would agree it's critical to capture information, to share it, to consume it. But the challenge is, how do you do that effectively? And the only answer to that is using machines and AI, because it can't be done manually.
Susie? No?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're right. You agree with him?
Yeah, I was just shaking my head. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the name of the game is enriching the data that was mentioned by the previous speaker.
Add value.
Add value and make sure that wherever you are in a smart environment, that is enriching your life. So add value to the data, combine data, don't continue working in silos, combine all that, and then enrich your life.
But when you talk about innovation, a lot of people are scared to death because they say, the big five, the frightful five, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, and Google, will basically gobble up all these new small companies, and we end up with a monopolized market. What do you think? Is that a fair assessment?
Well, it's definitely a risk. I mean, there's no way denying that there is a risk, and there's a very big economy in scale in what we're doing today with technology. I mean, yeah, it pays off to be very big.
And it wouldn't be smart.
Yeah, exactly. and I think it will also allow them to have these massive communication and calculation facilities in the cloud to become even more efficient based on the system learning itself. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, let's put it that way. And there I do think, in all fairness and honesty, that there's government that needs to monitor that at least and take action when things are going the wrong way. I don't think we need monopolies. I think we need an open market to have choice. So
Mark, how frightful are the frightful five?
Yeah, I agree. I think that they could be very frightful. I mean, they've done huge amounts of benefits for us. But I think that platform model, which those big five have perfected, is a self-reinforcing model, which is why it's so successful, why these companies are worth so much money. But I think there has to be some caution to it. And I think one of the impacts of the pandemic has been that people have forgotten about some of those reluctance or some of those hesitancies about what the power of these platforms means, in favor of all the great capabilities that are coming out from all the collaboration tool sets, and that, the fact the internet didn't break and we could get to our applications. People have kind of forgotten some of those concerns of privacy and control. And I think that's a big risk.
Yeah, and we'll eventually, as a young creative, we all know creative destruction, right? And we've seen a lot of huge companies, the IBMs and American Steels of the past, and they I wouldn't say disappear, but they it didn't go very well with them eventually. Will creative destruction eventually take care of the frightful five?
No, I don't think so. I think
This time is different?
Yeah, it's different. We're talking to an awful lot of customers, whether it's enterprise data centers or cities, and they insist of making use of the local companies, to help them with the challenges that they have. So it could be that the big five will provide them with a basic infrastructure. Yeah. It's something like an iceberg, the basic infrastructure provided maybe by the big five, but the top, and that's very important element of the total solution, will be provided by the local players.
Yeah. We have some questions from people in the audience, wherever you are. Jacqueline Leenhouts asks, you see a big variety in IoT solutions. How do you see all these solutions come together, and which role do you think the big telcos should take? Asked Jacqueline. Anybody? Rob?
I could.
Yeah? Mark? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, the obvious first one is connectivity, right? And that's what they're all doing. The challenge there is that's connectivity not like they're used to, right? When you think of the ARPU, the cost per month, or the spend per month per endpoint, it's tiny on a lot of IoT. It could be 50 cents. So that's not like what you and I would pay for a smartphone connection at all, or a broadband connection. So that's a challenge. So they got to move up stack and add more value, and that's where they're scrambling around trying to figure out what kind of value. What we talked about, analytics on that data, packaging that data, turning that data into an asset. That's the direction that I think the telcos can go in. But I think they're also being very cautious. Somebody mentioned earlier, they have to be careful of their cost. They can only do things that scale massively, and an awful lot of the IoT use cases don't scale.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I think
Rob?
the trick is you need the combination, right? You need the infrastructure, you need assets, you need IoT, you need devices, you need bandwidth, and then you need at some point you need creativity, and that's telcos and creativity don't necessarily match well. So you need to for the last mile, if you will, the application development. I think you need local players that know the local landscape, the local needs and regulations, etc. So you need to go to a much more complicated ecosystem.
Yeah. Let me go to the poll question before we go to the results. I would like to put the same question to you guys. The question was: Is in the post-corona age, smart homes, offices, and cities are more important than our privacy? Is it more important? What would you say, Susie?
Absolutely not. I
Absolutely not. Okay.
Privacy is, I think, absolutely key.
Key. Even if it slows down technological.
I think you can do both.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's an if or that. I mean, given where we are today, I think you got to lean in, and I think you can do both. I don't think it's binary at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fully agree. It's not one or the other, it's a combination of the two.
You have to be smart about it.
Yes.
You can.
And we can, yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Who said that?
What? Yeah, you said it, right? Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's a sliding scale if we're not careful. It's things we're getting used to. I mean, everybody's walking around with a smartphone, which means that people know stuff about you that you probably don't even know they know about you. Yeah. That's the kind of thing people need to be more aware before you can actually do something about this. So I believe it's a sliding scale. But to your point earlier, I think yes, it can be done both, definitely.
Mark, what about you? Privacy, or just give it up, or we can do both, like they said here.
I think we have to do both, but I think it's a very, very hard calculation to figure out how we do that. I think every now and then we see some big surprise that people, I didn't know that information was being collected about me, and then we have to shut something down. We've seen that several times with some of the carriers. The over-the-top players, Facebook, Google, they seem to get a pass. Carriers don't. Right? Now, carriers do charge you money, and Google doesn't charge you anything to do a search. But what they are doing is monetizing your eyeballs, your presence there. So they have a responsibility to manage this. I just think we've got a long way to go to figure it out.
I think they're starting to learn, though. I think they're starting to take the privacy issue more serious lately. If you look at the latest COVID-19 APIs that Apple and Google developed, they are the ones that regulate the usage of the APIs. So it's only used for medical purposes, blah, 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 and not for any state wish, basically. So it's kind of interesting to see that the big five.
And it's interesting to see what happens now to Facebook. That's not so much about privacy, but more about political stuff, of course. But the big companies saying to Facebook, you have to change.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to not only adapt, but change radically. That's writing on the wall, isn't it, Susie?
Absolutely. Yeah, and they hit them where it counts. They pull the advertising. They hit them right where they're
left and right. Coca-Cola, everybody,
Absolutely.
big companies.
Yeah.
Starbucks, everybody.
Yep. You have Audi. You have a lot of companies that are going in, just going. you have got to change. I think they went to Congress. Congress hasn't done, the governments haven't done enough to do it. So corporations are stepping in and they're going, if you don't change, we're just going to pull it.
Finally, Mark, you agree? I mean, these companies have to change because companies, public opinion will make them change?
I think the big stick are companies, are enterprises,
Okay.
because they're spending the money. If they don't spend their money, we've seen what Facebook stock has lost 60 billion in a couple of days.
Mark Zuckerberg
that-
lost a couple of billion, yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah, that works. Right.
Enough left, yeah. So
But that's clearly more that's more clout than government has over them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, we were talking about smart everything. One of the things that gets smarter and smarter and changes drastically is the way you and I work.